Going to give you guys a second to get in here. I'm going to explain this twice. I can't see your comments, so if you guys ask something, I can't see it.
I got your
But
back.
we're going to have a fun, if you want to pull it up on your device, that'd be good. We're going to have a fun, interactive event. Like, it's not really an event, but a conversation today. And we're going to be looking at this. And it's called the 4 primary issues with pay to play. And we're going to make this fun. So I'm doing this live, right? This is not recorded. This is not this is all live right off the cusp. And we're going to be talking about, like I just said, the 4 primary issues with pay to play. And they're going to be broken down into 4 concepts, which you're going to get into in a second. And the idea to make this is interactive and fun. So it's not just going to be me talking to you guys. We're going to try and make this a game at the same time as we go through it, so it's more entertaining and more viable and fun. Okay, so Bella, take us through to the next piece, please. Open the next one. Yep, just slide us through. Just click the arrow. Click the arrow. Yep. But you got to get off that part.
Oh.
Okay, so the 4 main issues of pay to play, as I've broken down, are the following. We have the organizations, the coaches, the parents, and the players. And those are our 4 main culprits. So I'm going to walk you through each one individually. So we have our organization, we have the coaches, we have the parents, and we have the players. And I'm going to walk you through what I have found over the last 10 years doing this. What are the main issues about this? So there's, just for reference, right? There's good things and there are bad things. So I'm going to highlight a lot of the bad things, and I'm going to also highlight good things that are a part of this. So I just want to make sure you guys understand what we're going to be going through as we do this. But there's pieces that are going to be a part of the process, which I'm going to be highlighting and figuring out as we go through it and having fun, okay? Let's move forward again, Bella, if you don't mind. Okay, so organizations, right? So the very first thing is you can see, hopefully you can see all of them here. We have, I'm going to go through all of them real quick. Money is the priority. Let me stand on this side, probably easier. Money is the priority. League monopolies. 9 governing bodies. No incentives. Coaching education. New team creation. And no real pathways. So I'm going to try and go through each one. And again, this is about having fun, being interactive, and trying to make it educational at the same time. So the first one. Money is the priority, right? I have a dollar bill in my hand. It's actually 5. I have $5 in my hand. So anytime an organization starts, this is my personal opinion, whether it is a LLC or a business, so an S Corp, C Corp, or a nonprofit, the numbers don't lie. It's pay to play. Money's the priority. Now, the only example I can give you off the top of my head, there are some organizations that are 501c3s that do not charge a dime for it. That means they're not just in it for the money. They're there to actually help people. So $5 in front of me here. This is about the money. And how that works is, if we were to, do me a favor, I'm going to sit here. And if you could turn the camera so they can see me as I'm doing this. Right, so let's pretend I'm in a meeting room, right? So I'm an organization, we're hosting this, and we're deciding to create a club. The first thing is you have to balance the book. So you got to come up and you got to know, okay, how much money is it going to cost me to run this? So how much money? So for example, it's going to cost me, just a quick number off the top of my head, $3,000 a month, because I got to pay for fields, I got to pay for insurance, I got to pay for my coaches, I got to pay for licensing, all this stuff that has to go into this. We got to pay for that. So money is the premise behind it because it's a cost, right? So there's no hiding behind that fact of it being an issue of needing to pay for this. So money has to be spent to make this happen. So money will always be the foundational piece, the building block to this. So I create a new team. New team comes up. I know that I have 10 players and they're going to be paying me $2,000 per player for the year. That's $20K, guys. $20K is going to be coming in as revenue per season. So when you know that, then you have to play with those numbers and figure out, okay, well, what is my cost on that? So how much do I have to pay the coach? How much do I have to pay for the field? How much do I have to pay for X, Y, and Z? And those are things that are broken down that you guys probably don't know about when it comes to money is the priority. So these organizations, they're businesses, right? Even if it's a nonprofit, unless they're doing it for free. And I'll give you a personal example because we did it for free. I have a nonprofit at the 501c3. We give soccer classes to kids for free. They don't pay a dime for any of it. Nobody pays anything. And it's literally us giving back. Okay, that's just one example. Now, that's not most places, but there are some that do that. Now, that's why when I say money is the priority, this is what's happening. Okay, so you have a team. You need to know how much it costs, how much operationally. And those are the aspects that are not accounted for from a parental perspective that you guys don't see. So when you hear board members and stuff, and they'll talk about, okay, we need more kids. We need more players. We don't have enough teams. What they're referencing is they want to generate more money. And that's okay. It's business. Business needs money to survive. They need to have, as you know, profit to sustain themselves. They don't have profit, they can't sustain. However, the challenge becomes if the only thing is money, players take the back end. So when we talk about development is no longer the priority. The priority is how much money can we generate? And this happens not with every single club, but it does happen with a lot of them. So this is why when I talk about cash cows, and I mentioned the word, well, a cash cow. So let me try and quickly highlight what a cash cow is. And again, money is the priority. So a cash cow is an organization that is trying to maximally monetize their audience. So they're not just trying to provide value anymore. They're just trying to make as much cash as possible. So we're going to get it in a second, and that's going to lead into the second point, which will transfer to screen. So I'm going to move again. And that's going to be the league monopolies. Okay, so if we're looking at this from the standpoint of league monopolies, you probably heard me say this before, maybe once or twice, but when I was a kid, so when I was a young kid playing, there were two leagues, ODSL and NCSL. And then eventually the DA came out, and now we have the entire landscape of what we have today. And it's become a huge problem. So we just had a problem happen, but we'll figure it out as we go through. Anyways, league monopolies. So example would be, I have a club, you guys might know the name, High Soccer Prospects. That's our competitive program. I do not have ECNL. I do not have MLS Next. I don't have EA. I don't have all of these badges. Now, you have to apply to get into ECNL or into MLS Next or any of these leagues. You don't just earn it by doing well throughout the season. You actually have to apply to get into the league. That's why I chose the word monopoly, because it's not about the performance. It's about the club infrastructure to get in the league because they want the revenue. So that's why I chose the word monopoly, because they can control who gets in and who gets out. And of course, everybody's going to want to play in it because players want to play in the better leagues. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense when it comes to a league monopoly. So it's not open to where you can earn it to get in. You have to have an organizational structure that applies for it, and that way you can actually get into it. And usually you have to bring like 3 or 4 teams. So it's not straightforward where if I have one team that's performing really, really well, we can get into that league. Now, interesting side note, this is my personal opinion. You may not agree with it. That's okay. I talk about how what league you play in, essentially up to 15 years old, so that would be like 14, like 7 to 14 years old, is intrinsically irrelevant as long as there is a basic level of challenge. So as long as you're not winning every game 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 0, it's like 3-2, 4-3, 5-1. 5-1's not a good example. Again, this is live, but I'm giving you ideas. You might have 1 or 2 games you do that. But the idea is, if they're competitive games, anything in between there is okay. Once you get to 15 and older, that's when the results actually start really mattering, because you can get scouted for college. You can get potential professional contracts. Those are details that are actually relevant when it comes to league play, and that's where that makes more of a difference. My advice is, what I tell players is, at 15 and older, you should be looking to transfer to adult unless you're in an MLS academy. Otherwise,
they should let us know about their reality in the comments.
Okay, let us know. Well, you can speak. You have a microphone,
Yeah,
so please say it again.
If they can let us know about their reality in the comments.
Boom, there you go. Heard about
to be
reality.
more dynamic.
Okay, now, hopefully that makes sense about the league dynamics. So let's talk about the governing bodies. Okay, this is where it's going to get kind of nuts. There are, as you can see, 9 governing bodies. I'm going to write a couple of them down for you right here. There's MLS Next. There's U.S. Club Soccer. Say Soccer. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. There's USSSA. There is USYS. There is UPSL. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just named 6 right here. Now, the reason why this is relevant, this is where it gets very interesting. Can you turn the camera again for me? Mm-hmm. This is where it gets very interesting again. Step into my meeting room, please. Okay, so I just gave you 6 of them off the top of my head that exist. So what happens is, let's say you have a player, okay? And you register under a club. Let's call that club Money FC. So you play under Money FC, okay? So you play for Money FC. Money FC is registered under USYS. So that's United States Youth Soccer. This would be things like, if you live in Florida like I do, that's FYSA. So if you're registered under USYF, under Money FC, but then you go to another club, let's call that other club Dollar Bills FC, right? I'm just picking something off the top of my head. Dollar Bills FC, but they're registered under UPSL because UPSL now has a youth league. You can register for both of those organizations.
Money FC, love it. LOL.
Or we can call it Cashco FC, whatever. So the point is, though, because there's 9 of them, one single player could be affiliated with every single league. I'm just trying to draw this out for you, and I'm going to show you on my thing. So you could have one player. I'm going to draw a face, make a little smiley face, right? And I'm going to show it to you just as an example. I don't know how you'll be able to see this, but that one player can be associated. I'll draw it here, make it a little bit easier for you. One player, he's got a nice little face, he's happy. He can play for USYS. He can play for MLS Next. He can play under US Club. He can play under USSSA. I'm actually missing a whole thing. He can play under, what's another one I'm dropping off the top of my head? UPSL. There's probably another one that I'm forgetting. Oh, Say Soccer. That's another one. Say Soccer. All right, so there are, just as an example, I don't really be able to read this. My handwriting sucks, by the way. But they could have a player card under 6, 7, 8, 9 different affiliations. And that means no club can stop you. So, again, using my example of, where did my note go? Here it is. Money FC. So here's our Money FC team, and then our Dollar Bills FC team. So Money FC and then Dollar Bills FC. You can register under them under USYS. You can register under Dollar Bills FC, under UPSL. And there's literally nothing that either one of those organizations can do to stop you. They're going to try and throw a lot of funny things at you, like, oh, well, you're breaking our contract, and blah, blah. Yeah, okay, you are, for sure. But they can't do anything about it. And the reason why they can't do anything about it is because they're different affiliations. So they can't block each other. But you might have seen this happen when you go to a tournament, and let's say your child's registered under USYS, but then the team that you're guest playing for is under US Club Soccer. They can't put you on their roster. They have to then roster you as a USYS player, or US Club player, and then you can play. And that's because the governing bodies, USYS, US Club Soccer, all of them, they can't be intertwined. They don't have insurance, they don't have backgrounds and things that need to be covered, and those are separate from each other. You're not allowed to use a US Club Soccer pass with a USYS pass or roster. It's impossible. You can't do it. That's how messed up this system is, right? And you've probably never heard of this before. And this is why I want to make this video, because I think it's very important for people to understand. And I wanted to make it live to give you that realism about it, so it's not just like a recorded thing. So it's all presented as education. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense when it comes to governing bodies. But a player could be registered under all 9 of them without any repercussions, because there's nothing any organization can do to stop it except complain to you and say, please don't do that. But that's how messed up this whole entire thing is. And what's important about this is if you go to any other country that's actually serious about football, okay, they have one player registration system. All right, so I'm just writing this very quickly, and then I'm going to show it to you. So they have one player registration system. You cannot go from using France, Olympique Lyonnais, to then go to Paris FC, so not PSG, Paris FC, and then go to, let's pick another one, Montpellier. You can't do that. That's not how this works. You'd have to be transferred. So you can't go from one, so you can't be at OL and then be like, oh, I'm going to go register under Paris FC. Oh, and then I'm going to go register under Montpellier. You can't do that, but you could do that here. So you could play for, I just ripped my paper. You could play for Money FC, Dollar Bills FC, Cow of Cash, and you could be under Say Soccer, right? And then you could be under Chanel FC. Sorry, first thing that hit my head, FC, and they're under MLS Next, right? Now clubs will tell you, hey, you can't do that. We won't let you do this. They can choose to do that, but they can't do anything to stop you, okay? Now, this is where it gets interesting, too. I want to add this piece under the governing bodies. It's not directly related about guest playing, so I don't know if people know this. So a club can, it's actually a joke. I find it a joke. A club can stop you from guest playing. So if it's using the example USYS, and another USYS club wants to use you, they can stop your guest play. It's ridiculous. Now, this is how we handle guest playing for my club. As long as we do not have an event, so if we don't have a tournament, a league game, or whatever's going on, we allow our players to guest play. The only thing we ask you to do is just communicate that you're doing this ahead of time, and then I will be more than happy to give the authority to go ahead and do something. That's no problem. I'm under the belief that we don't want to stop kids from playing soccer. However, a lot of organizations will, because they're afraid of losing players, right? And this goes into the whole governing body piece, and money is the priority. So they'll be afraid of losing players, so they'll lose that lifetime revenue, and they'll block your guest play. However, like I mentioned before, if it's a U.S. soccer club or U.S. club soccer, you can't guest play from USYS. So I'm going to put a big X here. So USYS. So let's say you're registered under USYS. You cannot guest play under US club. You'd have to go get a player card, right? So you can here, USYS to USYS, guest play, no problem. You cannot, however, USYS to US club, you cannot guest play because it's not permitted. They're two different governing bodies. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's move back to this way.
They said, yeah, this is crazy. Very available info.
Good. Let's move to the next part, which is no incentives. Let's move back this way. So like I said, we're going to make this interactive and fun today.
Or try.
We're trying our best, right? We're trying to provide different content. Now it's a small room, okay? So it's not a bunch of stuff. But so the next piece, no incentives. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this. And I've put out some contents like older before about no incentives. Go ahead.
We actually have a question.
Okay, question.
Is there a sectioned versus unsectioned option in the US? Because
sanctioned?
You want to read?
Yeah, let me read it. It's okay. Let me read it. Is there a sanctioned versus unsanctioned option in the US? Because in these cases, they cannot stop you from playing both leagues either. There are definitely organizations that are unsanctioned. Absolutely. Like, there's probably tournaments that are unsanctioned. So I think there's a lot of like 3v3s and 5v5s. Those would be unsanctioned because they're not under one of the governing bodies. So if you look at most tournaments, that's actually a fantastic question. If you look at most tournaments, they say sanctioned under US soccer, we accept USYS, US club, MLS next, say all the passes they will accept. If they are unsanctioned, that means you don't have to provide player cards. But like, there's a tournament that we did, I think it was a 5v5, like 2 weeks ago or whatever. All you had to bring was a sheet of paper. They gave us a sheet that said, okay, put your players' names on it. Please be ready to provide proof of documentation. So that would be like passport, maybe a player card, you could use that, or birth certificate to prove the validation of the player's age, if that makes sense to you. So I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, please ask it again and Bella will highlight it for me. Okay, so talking about no incentives. When you talk about no incentives, yes?
I just have one thing. For Brady, he made, or she made a question. We're going to wait a little bit because it's going to be out of the topic.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait for you.
Got it. Okay, so no incentives, right? So here's the deal. I'm going to try and break this down as quickly as possible. So when we talk about no incentives, what happens is we look at pay to play. Pay to play means a parent, you watching this, pays for your child to play. So you go up, you take your money or your credit card. I can go get a credit card, but you take your money, you bring it to the club and say, hey, I'm paying you to play, right? That's how this works. Okay, so the club has already received the financial compensation, right? And then they're going to be receiving it every single month on end, until you decide to leave, which is usually at the end of the year because everybody has a 10-month contract, right? That's how this works for the dollar bills. Now, the challenge with this is because they're already receiving the money up front, if you actually critically think about this, what is the logical reason they have to develop your kids? Like, critically think about that. What would be the logical reason if they know that they're going to receive the money regardless? So if Bella were to give me this cash, she's the consumer, I'm the club, I'm receiving the cash. Great, I just got the money. Why do I have to go develop her son? I don't have to. And that's the thing that I'm trying to explain with. Now, if we use the model of compensation for formation, and then I'm going to come back to pay to play, in compensation for formation, I'm the club, okay? I take the risk. I pay money out of my pocket to take a group of kids, 10, 20, whatever number it is, 30 kids. I train them. If after a certain number of time, 1, 2, 3, whatever number becomes a professional, and then I sell them, then I get paid. So then FIFA and it's through FIFA, but then the other club pays me because I developed them. So I have to pay ahead of time to train them and bring them into my environment. So I pay for their training. And then when I sell them, Bella's going to take this money back. Then I receive a check. I'm using the word check. Then I receive money. It's called compensation for formation. So I have to spend money ahead of time. So I give the money out.
Oh.
I take the players. I train them for X number of years, and it's between 12 and 23 years old. And then when I sell the player that makes it to another country, then I get paid money. And that's how training compensation works. There's way more that goes into that, but just from a very brief and minute detail, that's how this works. So transferring back to pay to play now, there are some organizations that care to do the right thing. Not all of them. There's very small, few. And those are typically, this is from my experience, smaller organizations. And here's why. A smaller organization, like myself, my club is very small. If we don't do the right things, we won't survive because we don't get the best players because I don't have the league. I don't have the league. I don't have MLS Next. I don't have ECNL. I don't have EA. I don't have pick whatever league, DPL, GA. I don't have any of them. I don't want them, to be quite honest. But because I don't have them, if I don't develop kids, then I'm out of the business. Now, I can't say that for every small organization, but my experience, when I've seen small organizations, the one that are smaller have to develop because they get lower level skilled kids. They get what I call Team 2, Team 3, Team 4, Team 5, Team 6, Team 7, Team 8, Team 9, Team 10, Team 11 players, which are kids that cannot dribble, cannot pass, cannot receive the ball, which means they also can't shoot. So then we have to do our work to develop them. And then what usually happens is we develop them, and then the cash cows or the badges run tryouts. And then those parents leave and go pay their money to the badge organizations, even at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. Happens all the time. But that's the premise. So just to quickly summarize that, the whole no incentive. The no incentive is the club has no reason once you pay them to develop your kid. And the other point to this is because if they're a big organization and they have those badges, they're always going to get an influx of kids and a new influx of kids. So kids that play for a different club, when the tryouts come, boom, 300 new kids come and they get to handpick the new ones. Every single year it happens. And that's just how it works. And then the lifetime revenue of the dollar bill, right, it's only a 5, it's not a lot, but transfers to the new organization. So you just need to remember that. And that's why pay to play is set up this way when I say no incentives. Okay, moving on. We're going to transfer back to the table. Woo! Bella's like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I understand. So we're transferring back to the table. Here's the deal. So the next one is called coaching education. Okay, there's a lot of information in this. Now, there's a lot of things, and when I say organization, by the way, this is not just clubs. This is the whole thing. This is U.S. soccer. This is leagues. This is clubs. This is everything in between. Okay, this is my personal experience with coaching education. I cannot give you anything else. So if you look at U.S. Soccer's licensing platform, right, you have your grassroots. You then have the licenses where they're lettered. So then you go to the D, then you go to the C, then you go to the B, then you go to the A, and then you have the A Youth and A Pro, whichever one the coach wants to go for. And I actually made a mistake, but it's fine. So A Pro is like if you want to be a pro coach at the highest level at the pro game, or the youth is for young, for development. Okay, now grassroots is 44, 77, 99, 11, 11. They have online and in-person courses. Then the D course is like the final piece of grassroots, right? That's the final piece here of grassroots. Okay, then you have the C license, which is actually what I just did. I just did my C license, which I'll talk about in a second. Then you got the B license, like I said. Then you have the A, and then you have the A Pro, A Youth. Now, let's talk about grassroots for a second. So grassroots and D license. Before they called them grassroots, it was called the E license. What I found going through the grassroots and D license was the whole focus was on preparing a session plan. Like, how do you write on the piece of paper? Which is great. Now, what I'm going to teach you guys right now, if you're a coach watching this, or if you're going to watch this later, is this is how we develop this, okay? Now, it's very quick. It's very simple. You guys have probably already seen my curriculum. I've given it out for free. And the first part is you need to have your desired outcome, okay? What are you trying to achieve from the practice? And that's usually like 1 to 2 sentences. And it could be something very basic like, this is a very quick example right off the cuff, right off the top of my head. And it's improve players' ability in 1v1 attacking scenarios. Just, again, a very brief thing. And then if you want to be more descriptive, you could say as a 7 and 11 or in wide areas or in the final phase of play, whatever, right? It's whatever you want it to be. It's your desired outcome, okay? What then needs to happen is the coaching points, okay? This is what you as a coach will tell the players, and it's usually 2, 3, 4 things. So like in this very brief example, I'm going to say direct, I'm going to say speed, and obviously this is very quick, right off the cuff, and then skill. Okay, so if I was coaching this session, I would be telling the players through coaching points, so whether this is like freezing the practice or a keyword or talking to somebody individually or talking to the group, I would say I need you to be direct, which means you need to run at the opponent. So, and I mean directly, so I pick up the ball and I'm running at you. Speed means changing your speed, so slowing down, and so decelerating, accelerating. And then skill would be you need to sell the skill. So you need to be dribbling, throw your body fake, you need to bend the knee, drop the shoulder to sell it to the opponent to beat them. And those would be my coaching points that I would be highlighting. What I would then do after that would be, okay, great, we're going to then develop our training exercises. So our training exercises, if you follow my curriculum, is 3 or 4 steps or phases. Phase 1 is technical activation. Phase 2 is coordination. Phase 3 is a small-sided game, depending on the age group, 1v1 or 2v1. So let's say U8, U9, U10, U11. And then the final phase, phase 4, would be a game, like 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, and I want those numbers, 1v1 to 5v5. That's what my curriculum is. That's what we're trying to do is develop better players. So I just gave you the whole rubric right here. You create your desired outcome. You create your coaching points off the desired outcome, and then you create your session. And then session being the activity. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to use your activities to connect with your coaching points to get you and your players to the desired outcome of what you're trying to achieve from the practice. So the desired outcome is the overview. The coaching points is what you're going to be saying to the players, and then the activities is what you're trying to achieve. Now, let me take you back now to the coaching license. So if we look at grassroots and we look at the D license, this is my perspective. You may not agree with it. That's okay. Football is a game of opinions. The deal is, though, the grassroots and the D license does not teach you how to deal with parents. It does not teach you how to deal with kids. It does not teach you how to deal with parent meetings, from my experience. Some people have said the new one does. Okay, maybe. That's great. Parent meetings. How about parent conflict? So a parent has an issue about playing time. How do you deal with conflict? Right? How do you deal with those things? Okay? You have a group of kids that I call are the average American soccer player. Well, how do you run a training session for them? What it used to be in the D license, I don't know if it is anymore, it's called, or was called, play, practice, play. In theory, in my opinion, is fantastic. However, the issue, in my opinion, with play, practice, play is you're going to have players that do not have the level of skill to play, practice, play, because play, practice, play is essentially just scrimmages. So you do a 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 scrimmage. You then go to a bigger scrimmage, and then you go into a final scrimmage, which is like 77 or something. And like, if you had kids with level, okay, you can run a play, practice, play session. However, if you have kids that don't have level, and this is where I have an issue with the licensing, because what they're teaching you, especially at DNC, does not really transfer to the players in the environment, which is our pay-to-play environment. You have kids that, for example, in pay-to-play, right, and this is where it gets nuts. In pay-to-play, you have kids that are there because mom and dad want them to be there, right? Well, how does a coach deal with that? You're never taught how to deal with it. You know how I learned? Years and years of experience. right? But I've learned how to deal with this situation of having kids that don't want to be there. So one of the key thing is, and I tell people this all the time now, is as a coach, the coach has to be able to meet the players where they're at. So if you take a group of kids that are, let's just use a simple term, recreational based, right? They're not highly motivated. They don't have skill. So again, they're the average American soccer player. You need to make a session that is probably like 90% fun. And that's, 20 minutes technique, but then 60 minutes games. So 2v1, 1v1. So like if I were running the session, that would be 20 minutes technique, 20 minutes 1v1. I'm just quickly picking something to say it's 60 minutes, and then 20 minutes 2v2 and 3v3s. That's it. That's what I would do with kids that need 90% fun, right? Just very basic stuff. And then you can even do the scrimmage first as an example. You can play with this. And I always say modify as necessary, and that's just how it should work. Okay. And then let's look at the C license. So I just took the C license. And what's interesting is I took the D license, I think it was 2017. It might have been 2018, might have been 2016, whatever, I don't remember. And I walked out of that license and I'm like, dude, I will never take another U.S. soccer license again, because basically what they say is, if you don't do exactly what we tell you, we're going to fail you. Which, okay, I understand the idea of you want people to adapt to the methodology. But I gave an example and I said, well, this is now, right? This was not back then, this is today or like a week ago. There's a coach at Fluminense in Brazil. His name is Fernando Diniz. The guy is like revolutionizing Brazilian football, and it's called relationshipism. If he were to take a U.S. soccer license, this dude would fail tomorrow. And he is the head coach of Fluminense. He was the interim manager of Brazil, and it's like he would have failed. So where I'm going with this is, if we look at the C license that I just took, I would say 95% of it is not actually transferable to the environment. What I will say, though, is that I do like about the licensing from C, B, and A. I haven't done B or A, but the C it's trying to prepare a coach to go to a higher level. So if you want to be a college coach, if you want to be an MLS academy coach, or maybe a pro coach in the future, you're going to need that type of structure. However, the thing that I'm trying to highlight is it does not help a coach in the average world of pay to play. For example, in the C license, they said, hey, you need a half field. Most people don't have a half field. They have an eighth of a field, or a fourth of a field, or a tenth of a field. And they say, well, you need to have your session set up in this way where you have everything drawn out and put together and everything's already on the table. And by table, I mean on the field. And all these details need to be there. And that's not the case for most places. So let's transition and move on to the other side. Mai was in the background.
Look at that.
So that's the issue that I have with coaching education. So long story short, coaches, and this is probably coaches in your organization, whether from a parent perspective, your coach isn't being taught when they go to these coaching education platforms how to deal with the environment of pay to play. That is the problem. How do you deal with parents? How do you deal with the kids that, are there because mom and dad make them be there? How do you run a parent meeting? How do you deal with parent conflict? How do you resolve those conflicts? What happens if it doesn't work out? How do you deal with the game? Right? There's just so many little things that you're not being taught. And I don't know why, but that's a huge issue from a coaching education. Now, let's look at new team creation. Okay, so from a new team creation, what this means is, and this goes into coaching education, and I'll give you a personal example because I made this mistake. So here's the example I'll give you. We made a new team 3 months ago. Right? It was a 2014. It was our 2014 third team. Okay? So in our organization, we develop players. So we love taking kids that are low skilled or no skill and building them into something. So we built a group of kids. They just started playing soccer. We called them our 2014-3. We picked a coach that was super passionate, right? And this was my mistake. This was my fault. I did this. So guy, super passionate, but he didn't know how to deal with 8 and 9-year-old kids. But we built a team. We gave this coach an hour's worth of training. We needed him to start coaching. We put him in. Within 2 weeks, it started blowing up, right? Blowing up. Went to hell very quickly. And that's because 2 reasons. We made the mistake of putting him with the wrong age group. He should have been with 13 years and older, probably maybe 12. And then he didn't have the formal training. And why I'm bringing this up is because this isn't just a problem with my club when I made that mistake, right? Because I thought the guy was super passionate, good with kids, he'll be able to figure this out, and we'll be able to help guide him along the way. So once we actually put him in with the team, with the 8 and 9-year-olds, we were helping him out probably once a week for an hour. So I would sit there and try and help him out, think about sessions, what he should be doing. But he didn't know how to handle 8 and 9-year-old kids. He didn't know how to handle parents, right? So super passionate, loved the game, you could tell that. But he didn't know how to deal with the environment of pay to play because the guy was from Brazil. So he's like, hey, in Brazil, this is how we do it. Well, buddy, I love that, but this is not Brazil. This is pay to play America. Okay. And so what I'm highlighting here is think about cash cow clubs. What happens is they make a new team tomorrow. They get 10 kids that are 2014, right? They're going to go find a coach on, example, Indeed.com. They're going to go to Indeed.com, find a coach. They're going to bring the coach in. They're going to do an interview. They hire him. They bring him in. They're not going to do any training. If they do, it's 30 minutes. Hey, what it's going to be is, hey, these are the kids. This is the platform that we use for communication. These are the scheduled games that you have. And this is what we need to do 2 times a week practice, XXXXX. And that's what's going to happen. Now, because when they create a new team, it's about money. They're going to create a team and put here, and we just want to get kids playing. And then they're going to pay a coach whatever the coach amount is. But they brought in 10 kids paying $2,000 a year. Just picking a number. That's, again, $20,000. They're going to pay a coach X amount of money. They have to do the player card and all that crap. They're going to make a little bit of money on this team. But they're not doing the training aspect. And if you go to any major club, there is no training aspect. There is none. There is no coaching education. Or what I should say is, if there is, it's so small. And the reason why it's so small is because it's so hard to do. So, like, this is something that we battle with all the time. It's like, well, how do we deal with this? Because, like, I'm not perfect, but I feel like I'm very good at dealing with the pay-to-play environment, right? But if I go and bring a guy in that has, let's say he finished playing college, okay? Realistically, it's going to take him, I would say, minimum 3 months, if not closer to 6 months of being on the job and learning. Right? And just learning how to deal with the entire environment. So like I get messages from people all the time. Hey, I want to learn from you coaching wise. Hey, I've heard about your program. Want to see, check it out. I just finished college and I want to get into coaching. And I'm like, dude, you have no idea what you're getting into. This is a completely different beast. I'm going to grab this chair. You think they'll be able to see me sitting down?
Yeah.
Just help me out here. So can you make sure? So 3 to 6 months, right? And like I talked to a buddy of mine that runs one of the biggest Ford dealerships in the country. And what he told me is how do I explain this to you? They hire a new salesperson. That salesperson has to do, I don't remember the exact details, but he has to do X number of hours of training, right? And then he has to do X number of hours of testing. So he has to pass the training. And then he has to do X number of hours of shadowing. And then he is not allowed to touch a customer until he's done all that. So what I'm highlighting is this is not what's happening in pay-to-play America. That's not happening. What is happening is a new team is formed tomorrow. A new team is formed tomorrow. And then the club is going to get a new coach on Indeed.com. They bring the coach in for 30 minutes. They talk to him. Okay, great. What's your philosophy? Cool. We need you to take care of this team. We got 10 kids paying $2,000 a year, and you're going to be paid whatever. You're going to be paid $1,000 a month, right? I'm just quickly giving you a number. And they're going to say, okay, cool. Report back to us once a month. Give us some details. If you need help, let us know. So, and I'll give you one final example. A very, very good friend of mine got a job with an organization in the Northeast that has 13,000 kids. Got 13,000 kids. When he got the job, he asked the question, hey, what is the club's philosophy or methodology or curriculum? You want to know what they said? I got to find the email and I can send it to you, or I'll post it at some point. The guy literally said, we are working, I'm paraphrasing, on building it. If you need help, please contact one of your age group coordinators for exercise ideas. Well, this club has been in business for over 20 years. Why do they not have a curriculum? They don't care. They don't need to care. They're just trying to revenue and maximize the revenue. And that's the issue that's happening 24/7 with this. Okay? Now, hopefully that answers a lot of questions. Hope that makes sense. We're going to get, you have a question? Is there a question that needs to be answered?
There's a message. Great information, man. I started as a volunteer coach at one of the U.S. largest recreation organizations.
Yeah.
Then moved to pay to play. It's a totally different environment all around.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's move on. If you find questions, let me know. So next one is what I call no real pathway. So I posted a couple pieces of content lately with a very good friend of mine. He's actually like a dad to me. He's the current technical director of Olympique Lyonnais, which is one of the biggest clubs in France historically. And me and him were talking on the podcast and just outside anyways. And he's like, here in the U.S., he's like, what I can see, and I'll post the clip probably tomorrow or Monday. He's like, your primary focus is to go to university. If by 17 years old, these kids are not professional, they're not making it. Obviously, there's an exception to the rule. There could be one kid that makes it later. Like a Jamie Vardy. Obviously, he's not French, but that's the idea. So we don't have pathways for kids to go from youth soccer to pro. Okay, and you're going to say, well, Kyle, there's MLS Next. And there's MLS Next Pro and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. Let's talk about MLS Next. I'm going to sit down for this one. Bella, you think you could swing me over? I appreciate this just so I can be more comfortable. I've been standing and running around a lot. And we got to go shortly, no?
Yes.
Okay, so I won't be able to finish this all today, but I've had a lot of fun so far. So let's talk about briefly MLS Next. MLS Next. And then there's actually something underneath that called Pro Pathway, which most people don't know anything about. And then we have MLS Next Pro. Next Pro, and then you have MLS. I'll just call it MLS. Okay, cool. So you have MLS Next. This is the pay-to-play version. This is where almost everybody plays. Okay, you pay to be in the badge to play against the better teams. Now, what's interesting is there is what's now called, and here's the pathway. You have MLS Next. I don't know how well you can see this. You have MLS, I called it Pro Path. It's called Pro Pathway. So it's actually MLS Next Pro Pathway, or just Pro Pathway. And then you have MLS Next Pro and then MLS. So what this means is Pro Pathway is for players in MLS academies. And these are the potential players that might go and be a professional. That's the pathway games. It's like MLS Academy versus MLS Academy. Okay, then MLS Next Pro is the second division of MLS. So this used to be called, like, for example, I live in Orlando, so there's OCB. This is Orlando City B. And then you have Orlando City, which is the first team. So this is their pathway. Here's a challenge. In the state of Florida, we have, just for USYS, we have 113,000 kids playing because that's what they told us at the AGM. So at the AGM, they said, okay, guys, there's 113,000 kids playing, right? Well, guess what? There's only 2 MLS academies. There's Inter Miami, okay, and then there's OC. They're going to take 30 kids at most. They're going to be taking 30 kids. So that's a total of potentially 60 kids. You can't service everybody. Now, obviously, you can't service everybody in Europe either. Right? It's not possible. But there are multiple divisions of adult, and then they have something that's called promotion and relegation. We have a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Will the college American football pathway work for football?
Would the college American football pathway work for soccer? I don't know. And the reason why I don't know is I'm the most un-American American. I don't watch football. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch hockey. I don't watch baseball. I don't know anything about it. So one of the things that I say, and you might not agree with this, is my personal opinion. If I don't know something about something, I can't speak about it. So I can't answer if that would be a good point. The only thing I would say is probably not if I'm going to give you an opinion. And the reason why is because if they're going to college, that means they're going to graduate like I did around 21 to 23 years old. Right? I graduated at 20, it was either 21 or 22. I think it was 22 is when I graduated. So the example I gave you about my buddy at Olympique Lyonnais in France, he said at 17, if you're not pro, it's too late. Now, obviously in MLS, we have the MLS Super Draft, right? But again, in France and in most countries in the world, if you're getting to pro after 17, well, you wouldn't be a pro. It's too late. So just on that premise, no. Yes.
We have another question. Great content, and thank you for Intel.
Yeah.
I would like to know what is the solution for pay-to-play environment. Please address.
Okay, so I will address that. Actually, I think it's the next. No, it's the third one. So let's do this. I'll go ahead and address it for you now because we're not going to have time to do it later because I'm going to have to stop. I'll have to do another live to go through the rest of this. But so let me finish this part about the pro pathway, and then I'll answer your question about how do you fix it. Okay, there's no easy fix, but there are some ideas that I have. Okay. So when we look at the no real pathways, I'm bringing this up because Inter Miami and OC are going to take up to 60 kids a year. There's 113,000 kids in in Florida under USYS. There's going to be US Club Soccer and all the other organizations that have players too. So realistically, there's probably 130, 160 kids, 160,000 kids playing. How are you supposed to see all the talent? You can't. So the percentage chance, like if we were to do basic math, I mean, it's almost zero. Like, if you were to do 60 just divided by 113,000, I mean, you're talking 0.000000001%. Like, it's beyond almost impossible. So, like, obviously in Europe or in South America, it's still almost impossible. But there are different divisions. And since there's promotion and relegation, a club like Bournemouth can go from non-league football all the way up to the Premier League. We don't have that here in MLS pay-to-play, or MLS in general. Okay, and what happens is, I've noticed this from experience, whether this is right or wrong, this is my personal take. People think that if they play in MLS Next, pay-to-play, they're going to have a realistic shot at MLS. And I'm not even talking about the Pro Pathway or MLS Next Pro. I'm talking about MLS. And the chance of a player going from MLS Next pay-to-play to MLS again is like 0.00000000001. It's so unrealistic that it's going to happen. It's crazy. So we have a huge issue in this country of pathways. And the reason why I'm bringing this up as well is MLS clubs have been around since 96, 95. So just after I was born in 92. And they didn't have MLS academies then, but they had players. So like when we talked about before about training compensation, clubs in Europe and in South America survive, like the smaller ones. So not Manchester City, not Manchester United, not Borussia Dortmund. I'm talking about like the Division 3, 4s and lower. They're going to survive on training compensation. So an example would be Jude Bellingham. Okay. He just signed this past summer, so 1 year ago almost, to Real Madrid for 100 and change, like 115 million, right? Now check this out. The club that formed him, Birmingham City. So this is where he was developed under training compensation. So he went from Birmingham City to Dortmund. Dortmund then sold him for 115 million. So Birmingham City, because they formed him and he was under the age of 23, they received training compensation and solidarity payments, which is another part of training compensation. It's a different piece, but it's under the same segment, of £6 million. So I'm going to put a dollar sign, but that's not correct, but £6 million. So because they formed Jude Bellingham, they received £6 million, I believe it was pounds, it might have been euros, but let's just say 6 million in training compensation, in solidarity payment fees, just for forming him. You know how many years of fees that's going to cover for the academy? For Birmingham City's academy, I mean, that's a minimum. That one fee will cover a minimum of 5 years. And I would say a maximum, depending, I don't know what their spend is, but I would say a maximum of 20 years. So selling one player for that amount of money, that didn't even come from them, but they sold him first to Borussia Dortmund. They sold him for 25 million, by the way.
We have a question.
Okay, give me 1 second, Harris. Okay, so they sold him for 25 million. So they formed him, sold him as a fee for 25 million, and then they get a 6 million check because they had training compensation. So we don't have the need in this country to develop players. I'll give you this last segment too before I answer your questions. So I talked to right when I started posting content, I talked to a very famous celebrity. He reached out to me and said he needed my help. I'm talking to him. I can't give you the name, obviously, but I'm talking to him, and he's very well connected with a MLS club, and he has some kids he was trying to help out. And he's like, hey, I need your help because I need help getting them to the next level. And I'm like, okay, so we're talking back and forth or whatever. And I'm like, well, I see you're super connected with XYZ club. Why don't they have an academy? Why don't you help get the kids there if they're good enough? He said, Kyle, you want the truth? And I'm like, okay, yeah, go ahead. He's like, dude, MLS clubs, they don't want American kids. Again, I'm paraphrasing what he said. He's like, what they want is they want to go to South America, find a 16 to 21-year-old that they can sign for cheap, like less than $2 million, and then go and resell him for $20, $30 million. That's their target. And I'm going, damn, dude. And I'm like, you know what? He's probably damn well right, because if you look at some of the clubs, you can just do some very quick search. You can see some of the players that they're signing. A lot of them are signing young South American guys. 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. And they're trying to sell them, right? So they're trying they want to transfer them. I'm using the word sell just to highlight the point. It's called a transfer. They're transferring the player from one club to the other. They're buying out the contract and transferring them. So just to make sure that's crystal clear what's happening. So it's just easier to say sell instead of transfer. It's longer to say, and it's not as simple to express. So just to make sure that's crystal clear as to why that happens. So they're looking to buy South American players, aka they're trying to transfer him from a South American club to a MLS club, and then transfer him. So let's say a quick example. They sign a player for $1 million. Let's say a 19-year-old kid from South America. Okay? They keep him for 3 years. So then he's 22. So he's 22 years old now at this point. They were paying him, let's just say, $1 million a year. Right? Okay? So that's $4 million right now they have in net spend on this one player. But then they can transfer him for $20 million. Right? That means they're going to make $16 million. There's going to be a little bit of difference in that, but they're going to be making $16 million on this kid. It's a genius business model. They take the risk. They sign a young kid that they think has potential, that they've been scouting. Boom. They transfer him and they sell him for a bunch of money. Genius. And I've been given insider information. You guys know I've trained some professional players through the MLS. And so I've had conversations with some of them and some of their friends and whatnot. They've told me how messed up the homegrown system is. So it's not easy to solve through. And I think the potential is there, but they don't have the potential to see enough kids. We don't have enough reach for kids to get out. So again, using France, they have 2 full-time levels of pro, but then they have semi-pro Division 3 and then semi-pro technically Division 4 and then like completely amateur. And what semi-pro essentially means is you have some clubs that are quote-unquote pro, or they pay a significant amount of money, and then you have some that are amateur where they're just getting like minuscule checks. All right, that's the idea behind it. Okay, I hope I answered those questions. Now, let me try and highlight playing MLS, U19 MLS next versus UPSL Pro. Which do you think is better? I would 100% do UPSL unless you're in MLS Academy. That's my personal opinion. MLS Next model with EVA when it's far more egalitarian and fair that many of the true up kids. Yeah, so Fonciel, that's a great point, and I will answer that. It's actually part of the whole thing that I didn't get to go through, but to answer your point is using European and South American clubs. Guys, they have their own issues. Like, for example, I was talking to a guy today, and he's like, well, he's in South America, and he's like, the clubs take these kids and they exploit them because they're just using them to try and sell them later. Yes, they don't educate them. So there are issues in other countries, in Europe or in South America, where they're just taking kids because they think they have talent, right? And then they do not educate them, and they don't give them resources to get out, because the reality is most kids aren't going to make it. That's the honest to God truth. Most kids are not going to make it. So because they're not going to make it, there should be a exit clause or exit release plan or something for these kids where they're getting educated as well, and then they're being prepared for the exit in case they don't make it. Okay? So let's see here. Let me try and answer some of the questions that have come through. Who's getting exploited? The players sold or the ones not making it? You could argue both, because the ones that are being sold might not get an equal chance to play. Let's see. Yeah, there's thousands of kids that will never make it. Well, it's better in the sense that there's actually a platform to have players be promoted to the first team. That's the idea. We don't have it. Thanks for your Harris. I'm going to answer your question. Thanks for doing this. Your thoughts on training consolidate payments in U.S. Is MLS branding as many youth as they're training players for future? No, they're not. Well, again, I don't have every answer, but what I can tell you is I don't think so. So my answer is I don't believe that they are going to be producing talent at the same level that a European club will. Now, the issue becomes you have European clubs, you have South American clubs, like look at Endrick. Palmeiras formed him. So like, again, I'm speaking to my buddy who's the technical director at Olympic Lyonnais. He calls himself a formateur. His job is to help develop kids. One of his jobs at one point was he was in charge of formation. That means the development of players. That's their role. Trainers charging for kids for training or other clubs. I don't know what he's talking about. MLS Next model. Yes, the pro pathway would for sure be. Every model has significant problems for sure. Let's see. I appreciate it, Coach Paul, LACA. No problem, Paul. So it just depends on the difference. So, I mean, again, guys, I'm just giving the information that was given to me by the technical director of OL. Obviously, there are examples or exceptions to a rule. You might not agree with it. That's okay. Elite Division I soccer players are aptly athletic and skilled enough to play for European professional and somebody. Okay, so that's a great point, Fonciel. I'm going to give you an example. So a buddy of mine ran a combine, for lack of a better word, that was free for every single player. And there were 3 professional clubs that were scouting them. One from the championship, one from League 2 in France, and one from the top league in Turkey. And he told me, and he took top talent from around the country. Not one single player was picked from any of the combine, and there was like 100 players. Not one was picked. There was 2 that they had interest in. The challenge, though, was they said they were too old. They said, for example, one of the guys was an 02, one of the guys was an 03, but the examples they gave was they said they had an 05 that was equally as good, so why would they take the 02 from college when they have somebody in the academy that's an 05? The other example with an 03 was they had an 04 that was right behind, same position. The 03 was probably slightly better, but they'd rather not spend all the extra money to take the 03 when they can make more money on the 04. So those are just examples you have to go for. So hopefully that makes sense. ODP was always political, but that's different stuff. Great content. Thank you for your intel. I would like to know what is the solution for... Okay, so Paul, to answer your question about pay-to-play. Again, many people might not agree with this. That is okay. The challenge is, and I'm going to answer this question very quickly because then I have to leave, is pay-to-play used to be, when I was a kid, 2 leagues. What happened was a bunch of people realized they could make a bunch of money off kids. So understand that pay-to-play in my lifetime is not going to go away. And my parents, they spent $82,593 just on my youth career. So my parents spent $82,593 on my youth career. The reason that I am here today is because my parents found a coach who cares about and knows how to, or did know how to develop. So the example that I give is, if it was not for this coach, I would not be here today. I would probably be the average American coach screaming, kick it, boot it, and send it. So what I'm trying to highlight is you got to find a coach that cares about development and wants to do the right thing, because that is the key. So it's really, the key is, to answer your question, Paul, it's parent education. If parents know what they're looking for, they won't fall for all the traps and all the mistakes that happen in pay-to-play. Because, think about it. Does it really matter that there's a U12 MLS Next team? What is the purpose of it? Of pay-to-play. I'm talking about pay-to-play. I'm not talking about pro pathway. I'm talking about pay-to-play. What is the purpose of pay-to-play MLS Next or ECNL, pre-ECNL, or whatever other leagues, bro? It's just it's nuts. It's just nonstop. So, it's crazy. The thing is, it's just the environment that happens. So it's unfortunate. most people are going to spend a lot of money, and it's just going to happen that way. And it's just not going to end. So I don't know if I answered your question, Paul, but the key thing for me is parent education. If parents are educated, they stop throwing money against the wall. So the example that I would give is, like, when I was a kid, dude, I played 4 cash cows. I played for 2 cash cows. My parents did not know, and there was no development. But then we found a coach that cared, and he helped educate my parents to do the right thing, to know what to look for. And that's why I'm here today, because of the decision actions that my parents made to find that. So even though they had to spend all this money on my youth career, like, understand, guys, pay to play is not going to go away. Not until after my lifetime. There is so much money in this. It's literally not going to go away. So if it's not going to go away, you need to prepare yourself to not get ripped off. And it's just very simple. MLS is a pathway. Expensive, yes. Necessary for your player to advance and develop, no. Yes, I agree. You don't need to do MLS. I would skip it altogether. You know, like, if I could go back when the DA first came out, and if I knew what I knew now, I would have skipped the DA entirely and just gone adult. Because if a player that's 15, 16, 17 years old can play an adult in the United States and dominate, and I don't mean just be on the field and play, I mean dominate, they can actually do something in the game of football. So using the example my buddy gave of the technical director of OL saying that, he said, quote unquote, I'm going to post the content tomorrow or Monday, in France, if you don't sign by 17, it's too late. And by too late, and I think the context that people are not thinking about is, when he's talking about too late, he's talking about playing at the highest level. The highest level. Now, are there exceptions to the rules? Of course. You have a Jamie Vardy that signed at 28 years old from Fleetwood Town, gets on the Leicester City roster, wins the Premier League. Yes. But how many of those have happened? 1. So there's just things like that. So when he's talking about too late, he's talking about the highest level. That doesn't mean you can't go to MLS, you can't go play League 4 in England, or maybe the championship if you get lucky. It's just those details, man. But hopefully that makes sense. What's interesting is, let's go back here real quick, Bella, if you don't mind, and then we'll close this up. So what the interesting piece with this is, guys, I didn't get to go through it all. I didn't know it was going to take me this long to deliver this content. So we have the organization piece. We then have to talk about coaches, which we haven't even talked about yet. We then have to talk about parents, and then we have to talk about players. So stay tuned for more content. I'll be doing another live to go over the rest of the content. It might be another one, might be 2. We'll find out how many it is. But point is, we're going to be going through this content because it's so critically important, in my opinion, for people to understand and take information and see what the true issues are and pay to play. So this was just the organization piece, and look how long this was. Okay, so without further ado, guys, we're done. Bella, if you could close us out, I would greatly appreciate it. And let's rock and roll.
Bye, everybody.
Ciao, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and see you soon.